that this is not something. So honestly speaking, it was not that immediately I thought I need a nutritionist, right, or a diet consultant, and I wrote to Manjari. No, I actually looked at the group, every possible name, right? And then I graded everybody and said, Manjari is the only right person who can actually, who understands functional medicine beautifully. She works with Max as a nutrition consultant. She works with a lot of organizations, helping them focus on nutrition. She's also the director at Bonatra, where I am extremely motivated and inspired to see the amount of work she has put in there. She travels to Bangalore. Well, I think she was traveling every week. Now she travels every 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And the beauty is, she'll say, Dr. Preeti, I'm landing at 3 p.m., but I can meet you at 5 p.m. And I am like, wow, Manjari, this is amazing. So thank you, Manjari, for contributing so much to this functional medicine space, for giving us the confidence that we are doing right when it comes to diet and nutrition. And of course, I know you are going to share today from your heart so that every thyroid patient knows what to do tomorrow morning.
Thank you, Dr. Preeti. Those are very kind words, and inspired by everybody who's here. Look up to all of you, Dr. Vivek, Dr. Daryl, Dr. Anshul. It's a pleasure to be in your company. So I can request Renuka to put up the presentation because I'm very bad with technology. So yeah. Yeah, thank you.
I forgot to mention, she's written 2 books, Eat Up, Clean Up, and Heal with Foods. And I've read both of them. They're great books. Go on Amazon, click on the link, read them, and share your review.
Thank you. I'm in fact now writing the third one with Rupa Publications. It's on the gut-brain connection, and I'm hoping that I can make it very mainstream for people to read and not make it technical. So yeah, it's a pleasure being here. Let's go through the small presentation. We can skip to the next slide, please. And we can avoid this one because this has been discussed in detail. Let's go to the next one. So we know through the day, everybody's discussed about what affects thyroid function. Here, I only wanted to show about the nutritional bit of it. So there are nutrients that have a huge role in the thyroid function. And when you look at the pathways in which they work, there are multiple pathways that get affected. So the bioregulatory systems that are involved in the conversion of T4 to T3, and the fact that T3 and T4 are both competing for the same binding sites in the cell, that process also has some outlay in the nutritional status of the person who has any thyroid abnormality. So we know of nutrients, iron, iodine, zinc, selenium, magnesium, the vitamins, minerals, especially the B complex, vitamin D, vitamin E. All of these are very crucial for thyroid function. Zinc becomes even more crucial, and there's not much talk of it. Also with the fact that Indian diet, especially some of our food, has very little zinc to it. So let's go through how we can work on that. The next slide, please. So if you look at where these nutrients work, so the TSH requires protein, magnesium, zinc. So they become the things that are required for production of the stimulating hormone from the pituitary. And then, of course, you require iodine, vitamin C, and B2 for the thyroid to make enough amount of T4. And then the conversion of T4 to T3 requires selenium. It also requires a well-functioning adrenal gland, so no adrenal fatigue, and a good, healthy, clean liver. Yeah, do the next slide, please. So this is just a basic idea of what is happening with these. I'm looking at 5 nutrients now, mostly minerals and vitamins and inositol. So iodine required for T3, T4. You get it from iodized salt, but I would definitely not recommend table salt, which is iodized. It's always the other forms of salts, which is natural salt. The best one would, of course, be pink Himalayan salt, but Celtic salt, sea salt, even a little bit of rock salt and black salt are better ideas than taking white table salt, which is commercially iodized. Then there are certain foods that give iodine in good amount, especially seafoods, fish, some sea vegetables. Also, we know that kale is a good source of iodine. Some seaweeds, Japanese vegetables are a good source of iodine. Selenium is required for the, so it's basically the part of the cofactor for the enzymes where the T4 has to be converted into the active T3. We know that that's the biologically active form of the hormone. Now that conversion requires selenium. It is also required for the activation of T4 hormone in the same pathway. Most of the selenium that we get comes from the food that we can eat, comes from either fish and shellfish, but it also comes from some vegetables. Spinach is one of them, but other Indian green vegetables also have selenium in sufficient amounts. Some of the nuts have it. Brazil nuts are a very good source of selenium. Most of us already know that. The third one is iron. So iron is essentially required because the thyroid peroxidase enzyme, which is required for the thyroid hormone synthesis, the function of that is dependent on iron. And organ meats, we know that there's heme iron, there is non-heme iron. Vegetarian sources of iron are there, but it's not well absorbed. It's slightly poorly absorbed. Having said that, I do not mean to say that people who are vegetarians will have low iron levels if they have a well-functioning gut. But there are animal sources which are good sources. Besides that, nuts and seeds, these are also some good sources of iron, and of course, dark green vegetables. The problem is when you eat dark green vegetables, your body should be able to absorb the iron, and that pathway is mostly, a lot of people have that pathway compromised. The next one is zinc. As we discussed, zinc is again, the activity of thyroid peroxidase is one part of the zinc requirement. It is also required for when the thyroid hormone synthesis happens, the iodination of thyroglobulin. And it also becomes a part of the receptor function and signaling pathways, and its deficiency may change the receptor function or alter it, or sort of compromise on the signaling pathways for thyroid production, especially T3 activation. Zinc is found again especially in oysters, shellfish. That's a good source of zinc, but it's also found in vegetarian, a lot of plant-based foods. Millets are a good source of zinc, especially the smaller millets, the kodo millet, the barnyard, the proso millet. These are good sources of zinc. Besides that, seeds, especially pumpkin seeds, also Brazil nuts, flax seeds, and some of the pseudo grains, I would really not talk, are also a good source of zinc. Buckwheat is a very interesting source of zinc. It has a huge amount of zinc in it. So the buckwheat is another pseudo grain that we can eat. Vitamin D, we already know about the protective action of vitamin D against autoimmunity, and also the fact that there is a direct correlation between vitamin D deficiency and the development of Hashimoto's. So sadly, it's not easy to get enough amount of vitamin D, considering that most of us are indoors and don't get so much sun exposure. And so therefore, although some fish and eggs can give vitamin D, sunshine is the best source. But I think a lot of us would require vitamin D supplement, specifically a daily supplement, to make up for the vitamin D doses, at least initially, until the big gap is taken care of. Inositol, again, it's required for, one is, of course, the thyroid stimulating hormone. So reducing the TSH levels, that's one job that inositol can do. And then it also helps in reducing elevated antibodies, which are specifically part of the Hashimoto's, the TPO, anti-TPO, and the TG antibodies that we spoke of. Citrus fruits, a lot of dried raisins and dates and figs are is a good source of inositol. And now you have myo-inositol as a good supplement available, so that can be used if required. Just before we go ahead, I'd like to say that some of the people we see, especially with as Dr. Anshul and Dr. Vivek already said, that 80% or more people who have thyroid actually have Hashimoto's. It's autoimmune thyroiditis. And therefore, when we sit with them, especially in the nutritional protocol, we do put them on supplementation, especially selenium, myo-inositol, zinc many times, and try and make up for the iron deficiency also. So iodine is a double-edged sword. We'll come and talk about the iodine going forward, but iodine also in some amount can be given for people who have either primary, although I've mentioned primary hypothyroidism, but the same thing extends to Hashimoto's also. Let's go to the next slide, please. A lot of people are worried about something called goitrogens. So, what is goitrogen? Essentially, it comes from endemic goiter, the word goiter, which is the enlargement of the thyroid gland. And it means that any substance, which could be a chemical or a compound or any other substrate of a bioregulatory mechanism that can block the thyroid function in the thyroid gland. And that substance is called a goitrogenic substance. And although theoretically, there are a lot of foods that contain goitrogen. So if you look at the list, for example, we all know that all cruciferous vegetables, brassica family, also certain nuts, certain vegetables, soy, of course, as a crop, also strawberries have high amount of goitrogenic compounds, or let's say, not negligible, but significant amount of goitrogenic compounds. But as far as the fact that these foods contain goitrogenic compounds and whether it affects thyroid function, those are two different stories altogether. There is a lot of research which shows that although these foods contain goitrogenic compounds, they don't directly affect or they don't block the thyroid function. So they really, the amount of goitrogen in these vegetables and other food sources is not significant enough to create the condition of blocking the thyroid function or being goitrogenic in the true sense in the human body. Also, the other bit is that when you cook most of these foods that we eat, we cook them. So when you cook them, especially when you boil or steam these vegetables and these foods, you are able to deactivate the goitrogenic compounds, and therefore they don't stay active anymore, and they do not affect thyroid function. The systems in which goitrogenic compounds work, if you look at it, some foods contain cyanogenic glucosides, so then they basically compete with iodine for the uptake by thyroid. Some cruciferous vegetables, most cruciferous vegetables contain glucosinolates. So these are basically metabolites which again compete with iodine for the thyroid uptake. And soy specifically and some millets have flavonoids. And these flavonoids being active, part of they do impair thyroid peroxidase activity, which is required for T3 activation. So in theory, let me repeat, in theory, there are foods that have goitrogens, which may theoretically be capable of blocking thyroid function, but the amount of research and clinical work that has gone into it, there is really no clinical presentation of goitrogenic activity of these foods normally in patients, even for people with an active thyroid condition. And I'm not even talking about normal people. I'm talking about people who already have a compromised thyroid function. Yeah. Next one, please. So gut, we've already spoken about the gut. This is just to tell you how, the gut health can affect your thyroid function or can impact thyroid both at the hypothyroid bit and at the autoimmune bit. So the gut microbiota, of course, are, we know that 70-80% of the immune system lies in our gut. So because they regulate the immune system, if there is a gut dysbiosis, if there is poor gut microbiome, then it'll affect immune function, eventually causing an autoimmune condition. Also, also, this is also actually outlined by the fact that when we introduce probiotics and micronutrients that repair not just the gut lining and help us in toning down the leaky gut, but also improve gut microbiome, there is always a positive effect of that, which means that the presentation of the disease becomes less pronounced. The thyroid, if you look at the blood work, the antibodies start becoming lesser. So that also goes to show that whenever you correct dysbiosis or you address leaky gut, you will end up addressing thyroid malfunction in both forms. Yeah, let's go to the next one. The other bit that I quickly wanted to talk about is obesity or excess fat, percentage body fat, especially visceral fat. So whenever there is a lot of visceral fat, and a lot of people do not know that they may look lean or thin on the outside, they may have something called visceral fat. So they may be in the TOFI category. They may look thin outside, but they may have fat in and around their organs, in the visceral cavity and abdominal cavity. Now that fat, because it is not only inflammatory, it also causes more oxidation and oxidative stress. So there are various pathways in which the lipotoxicity affects thyroid function. Also because, visceral fat can cause, or stored fat inside our abdomen, around our organs or in the organs, can cause changes in multiple other mechanisms, primarily insulin behavior in the body. So that also, because it leads to a poor quality liver. We know that we need a clean liver for the T4 to be converted into T3. So the minute a person has excess body fat or percentage body fat or visceral body fat, it will be one of the reasons for having thyroid, especially a hypothyroid condition, and through various pathways, through the oxidative pathway, through toxicity, lipotoxicity, through a fatty liver, through inflammation, through the way insulin is behaving in the body. Also, of course, adrenal function will get affected with excess body fat. Next, the last slide. So these are just small things, nuggets that I wanted to put in. Of course, we know that nutritional intervention helps. Healing the gut helps. Reducing inflammation helps. Losing weight helps. So all of it helps in managing and treating thyroid disease. But these are certain things that have been very radically proved by science. So personalized intervention, when we are looking at anti-inflammatory nutritional protocol, specific nutrients, and on interventions that cause biotransformation, whether it is, again, the transformation in reducing inflammation or improving gut microbiome, we are helping in restoring the thyroid hormone balance. Of course, adequate intake of micronutrients, and a lot of people do not even know that they are low on iron or iodine or selenium or zinc or vitamin D, which is a lot of people not even know, and some of them, of course, know, but haven't done enough to correct it. So correcting that is of primary importance when you look at the nutritional intervention for managing thyroid disease. Besides that, of course, botanical supplements through botanical herbs and certain active components can also be used. Ashwagandha has been studied heavily, and there's a lot of information available about how ashwagandha is able to be used as a complementary treatment for thyroid. Balancing gut health, a good microbial landscape, which is primarily important. Not only it affects many other systems of body, it also is hundreds and thousands of studies show the concurrently reporting of gut dysbiosis with autoimmune thyroiditis. some pollutants, especially the pollutants that are present in our environment, dioxins, the PCBs, bisphenols, all of these things that are very commonly now found in especially in our fish, meat, egg, dairy, are also one of the reasons for poorly functioning thyroid, and they do have anti-thyroid effects. So for people who have thyroid, we also request them to eliminate, foods which tend to be higher in these environmental pollutants, especially the PCBs, the bisphenols, dioxins. This is something I wanted to talk about. So if you look at the last point here, there's been a lot of study on comparing hypothyroidism, and I'm talking about primary hypothyroidism now, in between omnivores, in vegetarians and vegan population. And it has been, and most studies have concluded and have to some extent come to statistical conclusion that hypothyroidism is a little less common, in fact, significantly less common in people who tend to be relying mostly on plants for their food. Of course, this sort of contradicts with the fact that certain nutrients like zinc and iron are found primarily in animal sources. But the fact that plant-based food gives us high amount of antioxidants, polyphenols, keeps our inflammation low, is far more healing for the body, allows the whole environment to be more feasible and more favorable for thyroid function. So it's not just studies, there's enough anecdotal reference, there's enough clinical work that we do where we see that when people move to plant-based diets, their thyroid functions become better, their TSH levels start improving. And the last bit that I wanted to talk about is really the animal fat bit. So there has been, again, there's a lot of work around consumption of animal fats and their association with the antibodies, so whether it's TPO or TG antibodies, whichever studies have been done, they show that consumption of animal fats causes higher numbers in terms of elevation of the peroxidase and the thyroglobulin antibodies. So that's another one. That's why, fats that are derived from plants, not seed oils, but things like olive oil, completely extra virgin, avocado, flaxseed, coconut, and good quality cold pressed mustard oil, and nuts and seeds. Those types of fats are more favorable for the functioning of the thyroid gland. Yeah, thank you. That was from my side. I wanted to keep it short and simple.
Perfect. You've taken exactly 20 minutes, Manjari. Thank you for being so much on time. And we have a lot of questions. So do you recommend the AIP diet for Hashimoto's management, Manjari?
Yeah, so because Hashimoto's is an autoimmune thyroiditis, the autoimmune protocol works very well for it. Because our autoimmune protocol is highly restrictive and it becomes a little difficult to follow. So we sit with people and work it around in a way that it's easy for them to follow. However, it has to be done for at least 6 to 12 weeks, depending on what the starting point is, and it shows very good results. So the AIP is definitely recommended.
Thank you. Dr. Anshul, there's a question people want to know, can Ayurvedic